Welcome everybody to the American Space Museum, our afternoon segment that we call Stay Curious. And you'll want to stick around today as we've got a lot of information about the families of the Crew Dragon astronauts that will launch tomorrow. And my name is Marquette, and it's a privilege to be bringing you this program with our cameraman and director behind the scenes, Marty Winkle. We've been doing this now into our 8th week, our little Stay Curious segment, and we're glad you enjoy this, and we'll continue to bring you this even after our museum opens up next Monday. But of course today is the day before the historic manned launch of the Crew Dragon on a Falcon 9 rocket on launch pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center. The pad's actually at Cape Canaveral, but we are going to talk a little bit about the crews and their wives, who are also astronauts. I'm sure a lot of you are up to speed about that now. This is something I've known for over a year, that these guys were married to astronauts who've flown. And I'm sure there's a lot of great stories, warm humanity stories out there about these astronauts right here and their wives. And we'll show a couple of their missions. Karen Nyberg and McArthur are the wives, some interesting sidebars about that. But first we want to talk about the astronauts themselves here. Doug Hurley, Bob Behnken. These are very seasoned astronauts. Both have flown 2 missions on the Space Shuttle over 10 years ago. Hurley was the pilot of the last shuttle, STS-135 Atlantis, that had 4 members on it. And in fact, I'm going to show you that crew right here. There's Bob Behnken right there. He's left center there with his commander, Chris Ferguson. All right. And the other astronauts on there, excuse me just a second while I get my glasses on, I know them, but you had Rex Walheim and Sandy Magnus, all right, who was the last American woman to fly in space. Ferguson, now, there's a lot of comments about these astronauts that they're not NASA astronauts. Well, they certainly are NASA astronauts on loan to the private companies for their manned space flights that NASA, you, the American taxpayers, put a lot of money into supporting their training, and as well as their training on the Crew Dragon. So Ferguson here, Chris Ferguson, is going to command, right beside Hurley, he's going to command the first manned flight of the Boeing Starliner that we hope will happen at the beginning of next year. So these are NASA astronauts that have been loaned, if you will, to the private companies to learn their spacecraft. And then we have the Orion, the NASA's spacecraft itself, that will have these commercial crew astronauts on them. So one thing about these 2 guys, and I'm going to show you here, let's look at, here. Sorry, I'm so well organized. Here's Bob Behnken. Bob Behnken is left right there below my finger. Marty right there. On his last mission was STS-130. This is the Crew 130. And as you see, they got these purple, what we call pumpkin suits on. And these were just to keep them pressurized in the cabin. In case a cabin lost pressure, they could stay alive. These are not made for spacewalks. They're not near enough the type of material and so forth to prohibit the radiation and the harshness of the cold and hot of spacewalking. But Behnken is a mission specialist, where Hurley's a pilot, and Behnken did 6 spacewalks on his 2 shuttle flights, so he may do a spacewalk or 2, because what was delivered yesterday, if you saw our program, was the Japanese cargo ship docked with the International Space Station. It has new batteries that have to go outside the International Space Station for the solar panels, and they're going to install those, and Behnken might end up doing a spacewalk to do that. We have 3 astronauts on the International Space Station right now, and the commander is Chris Cassidy, the American, and 2 Russians up there. And they're busy as all get out, because this massive structure needs a lot of maintenance, and they're keeping busy with that. So they probably have a list of house chores for Behnken and Hurley to do once they get up there. And they're all friends. And this is a very backstory of this whole thing that we're going to tell you, is that as we look at the wives of these two astronauts, let's first look at Karen Nyberg right there, the blonde of this group. Of her last flight was with STS-124, all right, was her space shuttle flight for 10 days. And then after this, she spent 160 days on the space station after taking a ride up there on the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. So she knows what it's like to ride a single-stick rocket that we call the Falcon 9. The last time we launched a single-stick rocket with humans on it was Apollo Soyuz test project in 1975 on the Saturn S-1B rocket. Before that was Titan, the Gemini Titan 12 in 1966. We launched all the Apollo Skylab on the S-1B. But to really look at us, and that was a more powerful rocket than the Falcon 9. But this is extraordinarily interesting that really a rocket like this hasn't been used since '66 to launch 2 men in space. And as far as everybody's confidence in the spacecraft and the rocket, they got no problems with it. They're go for launch. The most important man tomorrow on the Space Coast is the weatherman. So the weather's about a 60% yes for launch, okay? We are now getting in the rainy season in Florida. I know all of you chilly up there in New England and Michigan and so forth feel sorry for us that it's 80 degrees and humid. But we're into that pattern, and we've had a couple days of rain. The Memorial Day weekend was about 3 inches of rain in some places on the Space Coast. So fingers are crossed for tomorrow's launch at 4:33 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. In fact, it's 4:33 and 33 seconds. An instantaneous launch, because they've got to time the space station coming directly over at the same moment to minimize all the fuel required to get up there. So if it does not go tomorrow, and my insiders like Dr. Ken Kramer, who was our featured speaker yesterday, they'll probably take the count down to at least T-minus 45 seconds and then assess the weather, whether to scrub or not. If they scrub tomorrow, they'll launch opportunities are Saturday and Sunday, about an hour early, about Saturday about 3:33, and Sunday will be about closer to 3 o'clock. So an important mission, first time in 9 years, like you all know, that we're launching Americans off American soil in American spacecraft. And this space geek's just pinching himself that he's here and part of this museum with Marty and all of our other friends here at the museum to help bring you this program, because not only am I going to see my second manned launch, but we are going to bring it to you live tomorrow. We will have a Facebook Live at 2:30 from where we're going to watch the launch, and then we will come back on about 4 o'clock to let you know what's happening with the launch. And we're going to be on a balcony at a condo right next to Spaceview Park, a perfect place to see it. Marty and I are excited to bring that to you. So let's talk a little bit about, we're talking about Karen Nyberg here. I jumped up on that right away. Let's get to the families. And then the other astronaut is Megan McArthur. And Megan is right here. Megan is the brunette there on the Hubble telescope launch. All right. And she spent that was her only mission, was the Hubble repair mission 9 years ago. The last time we went up and serviced the Hubble telescope, and she has the distinction of being the last human to have contact with it, though it was with the robotic arm that she let loose the Hubble to go do its fabulous astronomical observing that it's been doing for 30 years. So both these, now Nyberg retired and Megan is still active. She's assistant chief of the astronaut office and very involved in spacewalks. So she was very involved in the spacewalk that we had with the two ladies. In fact, they spacewalked 3 times together. Christina Cook and Jessica Meir. So she had a lot to do with them. So a little about these families of these men is what's really cool is all 4 of these astronauts, the husbands and wives, were in the class of 2000. So 20 years ago, they got the phone call, hey, you want to be an astronaut? We chose you over 5,000 people. So can you imagine, they all four shared that exhilaration. They met each other as astronauts and got married, okay. Hurley, who's going to be the commander of this mission, is a Marine veteran. Hoorah to you Marines. He was a F-18 test pilot. Behnken holds a doctorate in mechanical engineering from Caltech. That's not too shabby of an education. And he was an Air Force test pilot in the F-22 program. Nyberg has a PhD in mechanical engineering, and McArthur earned a doctorate in oceanography. So, you know, and they both have boys. Both families have boys. Let me look at my cheat notes here to get that right. One has a 10-year-old boy, and the other is 6. There we go. Hurley and Nyberg have a 10-year-old son, Jack, who I think the internet blew up with a photograph of him looking out the window as it went viral at his dad's rocket ship at 10 years old. And Behnken and Megan have a son, Theodore, who's 6 years old. And very interesting story, the backstory of these two of these 4 astronauts living the astronaut life. Nyberg says in this one story on Space Flight Now by Stephen Clark, a great space journalist, that it's like she almost knows too much about the risks and so forth. They all know that it's a possibility things could go wrong, and that would be bad. But they're all very confident that everybody knows their job and is going to do their job. And the most experienced pilot and mission specialist up there that we have right now to launch this 2-man ship. So Megan McArthur says, we've been friends for 20 years. We started together. We're still friends. And now our kids are playing together. So it's quite an experience to have. And they support each other on this. And it's just a neat side story to this. It will certainly be an interesting day tomorrow, as everybody, including myself, is catching launch fever for these 2 men. Now, one of the things that is in the news today, as you look at their spacesuits that look unconventional to you, and I'm going to explain those in a second. Well, one of the stories about this Uber mission to the ISS, if you will, is they don't have a traditional NASA, they don't have a traditional crew patch on their spacesuit, okay? Nowhere. They have the American flag, and they have the NASA worm logo, all right, but nothing else on there. In fact, these are kind of embedded into the top layer of this Teflon-coated spacesuit that I'll tell you a little more about in a minute. So no mission patch means the first time since Gemini 5 in 1965, when Pete Conrad and Gordon Cooper spent 8 days in the Gemini spacecraft to test the endurance and food and life support systems to go into the moon and back. And it's no big deal. They don't have the mission patch on there, but some people are going crazy about it, of course, in social media. But one thing about SpaceX that we can tell you here at the American Space Museum is they're not promoting their own swag, if you will. We can't buy anything from them to bring in our museum to sell you, all right? Whether it be a SpaceX logo, hat, and so forth. The only place you can get them is at the Sands Museum out of the Air Force Station, and I'm not sure if that's open right now or not. So you can't buy this mission patch anywhere directly from SpaceX or from us or anybody. And here's what it looks like. What are we talking about there, Mark? Well, we're talking about this crew patch here that was designed by the astronauts and Hurley's brother-in-law. His wife, Karen Nyberg's brother, is an artist, and he helped design this, all right? And they always look for elements. They call this is the Crew Dragon Mission 2, Demo 2, is where you get the DM2 thing out of that. You got your space station. Every space patch has such beautiful symbolism in it. You ought to get a book about it and learn, because One of our friends of the museum, Tim Gagnon, is one of the space go-to mission patch guys out there. He, in fact, is called the Patch Guy. Hope you're watching this, Tim. Tim had a wonderful story about his patch that he came up with. It's quite unique. We'll maybe try to show that to you tomorrow. It actually is sort of a TV screen showing people watching socially the launch tomorrow. So shout out to Tim Gagnon that we have that he's got a patch and it's quite popular, and maybe we'll help him sell a few of those maybe tomorrow. Oh, so there's a lot of symbolism. F9 for Falcon 9. This is the astronaut crew symbol for astronaut pin. This is what the astronaut pin looks like when you've been to space. And so these are NASA astronauts. That's why it says NASA there. And so we're all about launch in America. Then SpaceX itself has its own patch for the whole mission, just not the crew. And this, wait, yeah, it goes like that. Because it's cut off a little bit from the printing of it. And there, we put that in there like this. Yeah, there we go. This is the helmet. You see the outline of this helmet that is not a conventional looking helmet. I'll tell you about that in a second. The American flag draping this helmet virtually with the International Space Station in the visor. What symbolism? Okay, so you got two patches that you'll want to get. The SpaceX patch for the mission itself and the crew patch there. Okay, now let's go back to the crew here, and we'll look at the spacesuits again. And of course, the first time you saw them, like most people, you go, what's that all about? That doesn't look like a spacesuit to me. Well, this is pretty much Elon Musk, okay, being himself, which is a great billionaire entrepreneur, right? If you think outside the box, usually good things happen or nothing happens, okay? Well, he thought outside the box here. And for those of you Hollywood fans out there, particularly the comic book movies, this was designed by Jose Fernandez, who is a Hollywood legend costume designer. And Jose Hernandez designed this for Elon Musk. And he designed Wonder Woman, Batman versus Superman, and Wolverine costumes, to name a few. And what you have here is a spacesuit, not really unlike the pumpkin suits you see here, except this was made only to pressurize the astronauts, keep them alive inside the cabin. They cannot go out in the harshness of space and do a spacewalk with this spacesuit, nor could we in the pumpkin suits, all right? It's only that if they lost cabin pressure, that they got air, and their body will maintain a temperature, and that they'll stay alive, much like, you know, much like anybody wears in height in test astronaut or test flight people doing the test flights, like at the edge of the edge of our atmosphere. Now, what's interesting about this is these are a custom fit spacesuit, whereas your pumpkin suits were one size fit all. They had a small, medium, and large. And in fact, we have a spacesuit hanging in our shuttle gallery that was used 6 times on 6 missions by 6 different astronauts. So, though there's a lot of top secret stuff involved with this spacesuit, one, they have let it known is that they're custom designed for each astronaut. There is a whole bunch of support stuff underneath it, okay, that balloons out a little bit to keep them snug fit, all right. They don't have it ballooned out here because they have their helmets off here, of course. But they will pressurize the suits, and so it'll keep them alive, and they've tested them in a pressure chamber with a complete vacuum and no problems at all. Now, the odd-looking helmet is designed for the best visibility, no little opening, okay. And these were 3D printed. These helmets are a 3D technology printed helmet. They have the head pieces and the earpieces and the mouthpieces built in, like our new Artemis suits will have, that we have on display here in our museum, by our good friend Gary Harris. Shout out to Gary, who built our Artemis suit that we have proudly on display that you'll be able to come see next week. And so that is sort of the story of these spacesuits. There's a Teflon coating, and you can just notice that nothing is sewn on. It's actually embedded, like embossed, the NASA worm logo. That's right, they're using the worm logo that was from 1975 to, don't hold me on it, but I think 95 was when they got rid of what they call this NASA script worm logo. It was around for over a decade or more, and then they went back to the meatball, the typical blue ball with the vector going around it that everyone loves and calls the meatball. So that's a little bit on that. Spacesuits there. Of course, adorning our little set here today of me in outer space is a model that we have of the Falcon 9 rocket. Behind me is the first stage, and we separated it because that was the only way to see the whole thing. And you have the Crew Dragon on top here, though this represents a Dragon cargo ship. All right, and a little over 220 feet tall. It's still 100 feet, well over 100 feet smaller than the Saturn V rocket, but it's about twice the size of the Titan rocket that launched 12 Gemini astronauts, or 10 Gemini missions that launched 22 Gemini astronauts in the 60s. So let me see if I'm leaving anything out here that I sometimes do, and I say, Mark, why didn't you look at your notes? I'm going to get to a special little offer we're going to have here in a minute to end our show and to help you stay curious. And we have really enjoyed that, myself and Marty bringing you this program. As I take a slug of water there, thank you. And if you got any questions or want to suggest a show, a program, please do. We're working on how to tailor this more to the education of our youth out there. That's part of our STEAM program, as well as LU space lovers out there. We are putting some of these programs on YouTube channel. The American Space Museum has activated its YouTube channel, and you can check that out. Our IT director, Bruce Jacobs, has just spent a lot of hours on this, and I mean, he's one of these IT guys that once he starts something, he don't stop till 4 in the morning. And we're grateful to you, Bruce, for all you do to help this look good, and he's very quality conscious, and we appreciate that. Because when we put it on YouTube, it's there for the world to see for the rest of YouTube eternity, and we've got some good stuff up there already. So, and some of it is not just our Stay Curious. We've got a catalog of things that we are posting up there. Not quite yet are we ready to put the oral histories that we have over maybe 50 to 100 of them when we count them up. But we're putting up things that are YouTube worthy that we've shown here in our museum. So I'm going to put that away, and then we're going to end by showing you something very beautiful. We have any questions, Marty? Anybody watching us today?
A few.
It's exciting that for me, because though Marty's an old hat because he worked on the Space Shuttle engines for 30 years as part of his career. It's old hat to them, but everybody, just to see the Space Coast come alive. The weather's an issue. Still, people are going to show up, and we're going to have a good time tomorrow. And we can't wait to show you some of that. We're showing you two beautiful coins here, or one coin. We're showing you both sides of it. And this is a solid certified 1 ounce silver coin, 0.99%. That's what the certificate is there all about. And you can own this coin at Kennedy Space Center. They're charged $120. Or wait till next week, and we're going to make this coin available to you through our museum Facebook vehicle and our eBay that we do. Does that look pretty good, Marty?
Yeah.
And we've got, of course, commemorating America, launch America, and then this other side with the NASA meatball in that burnished type of silver around it. But this is real 1 ounce chunk of silver, okay? And we will probably bring these to you in the $90 price range next week. We're not geared up for it now. We're a nonprofit. We've got a handful of paid employees and a bunch of volunteers like Marty and other ones that volunteer endlessly to keep this museum so special and ready for you to have it. So, Marty, we're going to sign out to everybody by saying be safe if you're coming down to the Space Coast. Please be aware of the pandemic. We would certainly not want to have an outbreak starting a week after this event. So wear masks, make sure your hands are clean. I'm under no illusion that people are going to keep the 6-foot distance over at Spaceview Park, but hopefully they will keep to themselves and their hands to themselves. It should be pretty awesome. So we're ready for it. And Mark Marquette here at the Space Coast at the American Space Museum telling you that Marty and I will be back 2:30 tomorrow, and we will launch America at that time. Thank you for tuning in.
Not that time.
Not at 2:30, but we're going to be on and launch America. If not tomorrow, we'll launch it another day. We're going to be live at 2:30 to give you a little tease. Then we'll be back at 4. And hopefully at 4:33 tomorrow, we will launch America. So stay curious. Thank you, everybody. And come and see us when we open next week.